and welcome to the Unconventional Path, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Stories and Ideas. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of successful entrepreneurs who might not be household names yet. I'm Bela Musits.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Hey, Mike, for those listeners who are watching this on video may notice that my background's a little bit different. That's because we're recording this while I am on my boat in Narragansett Bay in Barrington, Rhode Island. So a little bit of a treat for me, at least, because I get to do this on my boat. Today, our guest is Benoy Tamang. We had a conversation about some very interesting leadership topics. Benoy has a point of view that I have not thought of very much, but is clearly relevant in today's world. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Sounds interesting, Bela. Identity on one hand and credibility on the other are two really interesting concepts, and I'll be interested to see how these fit together. So, yeah, before we do anything else, let's get right to your conversation with Benoy Tamang.
Welcome to the podcast, Benoy.
Thanks for having me here. Lovely to be here.
So let me ask you a question. If you're at a social event, a non-work related social event, and at that social event, you get introduced to someone you've never met before. And after that introduction, they say to you, "So nice to meet you, Benoy. What do you do?" How do you answer that question?
This is an easy one because I've had this encounter multiple times, sometimes multiple times a week. And the answer is easy. I'm a father, and I'm a proud dad of 5 children. And I do so with so much love and gratitude that they can feel it. And I sincerely mean it. That's my proudest creation of business, this, whatever. The fact that I'm a father. And thankfully, my wife, we've still been dating for 43 years. So she's with me. And I can say, secondly, that, my wife is still with me as another source of pride and joy, right?
Yes.
Because it's a rare thing nowadays. So
it is.
And so I say that unequivocally, Bela.
That's, I've often thought that we have 2 sons, my wife and I. And by the way, it'll be 49 years for us this July. And we dated for 7 years before we got married. so we met when she was 16 and I was 17. But the point being is that we've been together a long time. However, back to the children. I've often thought that the most important thing we do as human beings in this world is have children and raise those children. That's it. Everything else is either helping you do that, providing you the means or the skills. But that's the most important thing. All this other stuff, it's noise in the equation.
I couldn't agree more. I always say I hear and see things and my eyes soften. When you said that, my eyes soften. And my definitions of success have changed over the decades, right?
Yes.
And one that I still hold true, I've got another one, is that success is when your children have grown up to be beautiful human beings that still love and take care of each other as adults. And they still like to hang around with the old man and
Right.
and mother.
That's right.
Right? That is a definition of success. If they support and love each other and they want to hang out with mom and dad, I think we did okay.
Yeah, amen to that. And it's interesting. I asked that question as a leadoff question in almost every episode. And it's interesting how 99% of people identify with what they do. And they immediately go to that. And that's sort of our bias, right? This is what I do. This represents me. And so I think in a long time, you've been the only person that has answered the question that way.
It's something that I feel deeply about. And about 34 years ago, I started a business, I formulated it, got all these experts to fly in to Utah around being the best dad. The whole business model was how to be the best father. Can you believe it? So you can tell that it's been a singular focus of mine for a long time, and hence the response to your question was easy.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to be the best dad.
So that leads us into, I think, sort of some of the topics we're going to talk about. One of the things that I know I struggled with early in my career, and I'm sure many entrepreneurs and people listening to this podcast struggle, is sort of, well, my business consumes all of my time and all of my energy, right? And so how do I balance that, right? How do I cope with that? How do I reconcile within myself that this is the right amount of time to spend on this part, and this is the right amount of time to spend on this other part? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, it's an age-old topic, isn't it? And we all have encountered it along our journeys. I think there's the best example that I only read recently, and it's an old example from an author, was using the analogy of a kitchen stove with the burners. Have you heard of this one, Bela? Where
I have not.
There are 4 burners on the stove, and one particularly is a little larger, and 2 average, and 1 smaller to accommodate, different pot sizes,
Sure.
I guess. And I truly believe this. He was saying that ultimately balance doesn't happen in equal proportions in life. You can look at work, you can look at family, you can look at social, and you can look at whatever else. Maybe it's physical. But ultimately, balancing between, work, social, family, and physical, they all need a different allocation of focus at different times of your life. It should never be one big circle and nothing. It just needs to have a different ratio at different stages of life. And starting out, and for me, I did 7 startups, started 7 companies. So I went through the ringer of trying to figure out how to balance. And what I've learned is you've got to focus on whatever is going to be your business, in this case, for all of our listeners, but never neglect the other 3 circles. And so there was a point where I would be on a plane for an overseas trip for 3 weeks. And I was gone 50% of the time for 3 years building a business. And I would hug and cherish my little children at that time, smother them, and knowing that I'd leave them. And back in those days, there was no backseat TVs on planes. It was dressed in suits. People were still smoking in those cabins. It was horrible. And in the back of those planes, you either had the airline magazines, or back in those days, the condensed Reader's Digest little magazines. And I would always go to the humor section, and then the little snippets of what I call love stories of families, of kids. And I would weep as I got on the plane, knowing what I was leaving behind. But when I came back, I cherished them and I played with them. My allocation of time wasn't as much as the other places, but I try to give as much as possible. That's my recommendation. Different stages of life, you've got to focus on a different, bigger burner.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And life changes as we go through life. The needs and demands change. What are the warning signs that my balance is out of whack? And I need to change something.
The first one is easy. The first one is what I call the irritable capability of your personality showing. You're not so great moments. When you have more of those than great moments, you're out of whack. You snap at your children. At work, you're always in a daze, rushing from meetings to meetings, no clarity of thought. It's that whole combination of negative energy, lack of clarity of mind. Immediately you say, oh, I am out of whack. I've got to get in balance. My wife, it was easy for me. My wife has always been the barometer. She says, I'm getting a little snippy. When was the last time you exercised? And I'd say, oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry. And I would say, can I just go for a run? And then I'd be back and I'd say, oh, can I rub your back for you? Can I help you? So anytime for me, I've noticed that the negative energy comes out, work at home, at whatever, you're off balance. You're
Yeah.
off.
That's an interesting story because I can relate to it. What my wife would often say is, "You didn't run today, did you?"
See, you knew that.
Same thing, right?
It's the same thing. And that's
Yes.
why I advocate, and I say this to all these business owners, CEOs. I say, hey, health is wealth. My mom said that a long time ago. If you don't have the oxygen mask on first and take care of yourself, there's nobody else you can serve, nothing you can create. You just cannot be at your top game. So put that into your required non-negotiable allocation of time.
So sometimes, as the saying goes, we can't see the forest from the trees. We're in the thick of it. We don't realize what's going on. And some people may or may not have a partner who can help them say, hey, wait a minute, time out. Right? You need to take a step back. But oftentimes that's not the case. And people at work that you may be working with, since you're the boss, sometimes you may appear unapproachable to them. So how can you get help? How can you get a barometer, as you called it, a third-party barometer to sort of help you say, hey, I need to make some changes?
So I will say this openly because I have these thin, cruel lips. And when I'm not smiling, I have this severe RBF kind of a pose where people will be scared of me. And I used to go around the office with employees thinking, he's mad again. And so I don't know what for others, how they did it, Bela, but for me, I would say at a company all hands meeting, I'd say, hey, people, team, friends, time out. If you see me going around the office with a furrowed brow, my lips thin, and just me kind of like this, I'm not angry. I'm just thinking, please stop me and tell me that I've got my angry face on. Would you help me? I'm trying not to do that. But with all the things I've got juggling in my head, sometimes I'll go back into my mean frowny face. Would you please stop me? I would like you to interrupt me. Please, I beg of you, help me. So I actually enrolled the entire team to help me with that. To the point now, smiling is much easier for me, not because of life circumstances only, but because I've realized as a leader, I've got to inspire, be open, be able to invite dialogue versus solving world hunger in my mind, right? So I ask everyone to help. That's what ended up for me.
There's two interesting things in what you just said, at least to me. One is you've opened up, so you're vulnerable, right? You've sort of displayed this to the people that you work with and interact with. Hey, it's okay. I'm a human being. I'm vulnerable. And the other piece of it is someplace a long time ago, I read some book that said something about the energy you transmit is how you're vibrating inside. Yes. So if you're vibrating happy inside, then you're transmitting out into the rest of the world happiness, good feelings, positivity. And if you're negative for whatever reason, maybe you're stressed out, then people can sense that. And that was a great lesson for me, one that I have a hard time sometimes following, or at least recognizing, I guess I should say. But I thought those were two interesting things that you said there.
Indeed. I've learned too, later on in life, that your being is being felt and exuded unconsciously. And that ultimately, if you are trapped in your own mental prison of scarcity, of fear, of doubt, it'll manifest. And so people sense it. And so it took me a while Took me until my late 40s, early 50s. Finally, I figured it out. Finally figured it out. And I have to admit, life is so much easier when you let go of all of those, the mindset that says, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not enough. My future is at risk. Changes everything when you realize, no, you're great enough, not just good enough. Anyway, so just as something that I have personally absorbed and I'm living, and it has made a big difference for me.
Yes. Yes. So there's this part of sort of self-care, taking care of yourself, recognizing when you're vibrating negative energy and trying to make a correction to that. Then there's this other issue that you just touched on a little bit, this notion of self-doubt. You know, when you're running an organization, you're running a business, there's oftentimes you cannot have conversations that you may want to have with your employees. You need to have those conversations with non-employees, and sort of that self-doubt or imposter syndrome, I think maybe it's been called sometimes. Can you comment on that a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic topic for many, many business owners, founders, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. There are two elements. The way you said it, it caused me to kind of make two distinctions. One is where you are personally doubting your ability to lead, to make the right decisions, all of that. And that's more traditionally what we think about when we think about imposter syndrome or anything along those lines. The other side there is also what I call the reality of not knowing everything. And that's a real thing. We don't know everything, and that's okay. Back to the first comment and the first distinction where we don't feel like we know the right answer and we don't have all the guidance and the tools. What I've learned over time is that that is always going to happen when you're venturing into unknown, when you're creating a stretch goal, when you are building something that hasn't been done before. And so with that said, I've just found out that over time, as a good friend of mine said, oh, are you feeling, what was the word? Are you feeling awkward? Get used to it. Leadership is about being in the uncomfortable, awkward zone.
Right.
Right. And you truly, truly are going to experience it. Acknowledge it. Acknowledge that leadership, everyone's got a different perspective. They come with different baggages from their family upbringing, abuse from a different boss. Got it. That's just the sequence of life. With that being acknowledged, and I'm going to go to the reality. We don't know everything. And what I've learned over time is tell people it's okay to not know everything. Hey, employee, you asked me a great question. Rather than being the know-all that spits out an answer instantaneously, as if I'm on a Google-esque kind of a caricature, I'm just going to say, you know what? It's a great question. I don't know. I've been thinking about it myself. I'm going to come to an answer soon. And when I do, I'll let you and the rest of the team know, because I know they're looking for the same response, same answer. This side here is healthy. It's real. It acknowledges with transparency the reality of me as a leader not knowing everything. So get used to discomfort. Acknowledge that you may not have all the answers, all the solutions, or even the skills. Admit it. Inspire people to say the same, to do the same, because it's dangerous when people bottle it up and create silos of supposed self-sufficiency only to break apart in just tiny bits of stress when the company really needs a team to hold it together. But it starts off with the boss not doing it in the right way. Does that help?
Excellent. Very good thoughts. Appreciate that. One of the challenges in businesses, small businesses, is as they grow, for some period of time, it's the founder and a half a dozen employees, and the span of control is pretty narrow. Everything goes through the CEO or the founder. Everybody knows that person, and then as the company grows, all of a sudden, you put in another layer of management. You now introduce a layer of management between the founder, which is often viewed as, the person who's helping to guide us. But now we have a layer of management and people report to them. What are some of the challenges and techniques that people can use to make that transition? As a founder, what are things that I should be doing to help me and the company make that transition?
Oh, I just had a screaming text from an executive yesterday. And this person was just exploding about the lack of thinking and planning by the leader she had hired. And here's the big thing. So right away, first thing first, the number one thing to be able to move on to a different role versus being the first level manager of the smaller team is you've got to hire correctly. And you've got to hire that leadership level to be more capable than that initial gut feel. Oh, I just need someone to take care of this group or whatever. No, you really need to hire correctly, not just in terms of cultural fit and this and that, but the capability to take the business a couple of steps more than just for that role. Because inevitably, just because you're putting out fires, you just put another firefighter in your place. Instead of, you want a leader who can improve systems, who can challenge, who can grow the business on your behalf, even if it's a portion of the business. So number one is hire correctly. Otherwise, you're going to have an exploding text message sent to the coach. Number two, at the same time, the harder job, apart from that, is that you've got to be able to have a level of discipline where you write down the description, the role expectation, the behavior that you want to have exhibited, the metrics that shows that the person taking over this role can win, and then teach them how to win in order for that individual to truly flourish and give you the departure and the worry-free new role of being the visionary, the CEO, not the operator who has to roll up the sleeves and get into the grind. To do that requires a level of discipline when you're used to just putting out fires. You're the one-armed, 10-armed octopus, right? But now you have to go, oh, you mean you've got to put some time aside and think through how to enable that person to succeed.
Yeah. One of the things that I've always thought about is as companies grow, individual jobs get narrower.
Yes.
And that's an adjustment because if your job's getting narrower, that means you have to let go of stuff.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Someone else is doing it. Yeah.
And it's an emotional toll that everyone goes through to give up their baby. And the baby is this, that they're no longer as important as they thought they would be.
Right.
I'm the founder. I'm the one that everyone comes to. I got to have the answers. I've got to be the know-it-all. What? They're not coming to me anymore. Oh, can I come into your meeting? Can I step in for you? Those are signs that shows that you actually are not just missing the action, but you may be actually disrupting and disabling the very leader that you put over them by doing an end run. And you cannot do that. But it is an emotionally difficult annexation of a role. You have to ascend beyond that.
Yes.
You have to be able to empower and give them the independence to make their own mistakes and not micromanage. So it's a hard thing to do, emotionally taxing, but after a while, after lumps and bruises, you'll get over it. They can do it.
Perfect. Perfect. So you have your own business. You've started a business. You currently run a business. Can you tell us about that business a little bit?
This would be business number 8, actually. Now that I think about it, I'm not saying that as a brag. I'm saying that I suffer from ADD or something like that, because once the creative portion starts to wane and it goes more to maintain, I get bored.
I have said that same exact phrase numerous times.
It's
I
just
think
that,
I've had 11 different jobs.
there you
I get
go.
bored.
And yeah, and so long story short, this current one, I think is for me, the piece de resistance, because I get to create, I get to serve, and I get to learn in this role. And what I do now is fairly simple. I coach fast-growing, first-time founders in the technology space who have been given some venture funding and now have to explode that money into 100x, 50x,
Right.
and they have only 3 to 4 years to do it. So I focus most of the time on the fast growth, intense world of software companies, technology companies. And I've done enough of them that I become now I'm the gray beard. I'm the one that helps them navigate that as a coach. And I get to learn, serve, and create in that journey. So I'm very, very grateful for this business.
So, I've always thought that it's interesting, and I think this is changing now. This is getting a little more utilized. But I've always thought about high performance individuals or people who work in high performance jobs.
Yeah.
What first comes to mind is athletes.
Yeah.
High performance, very competitive. You got to deliver or you're out. They all have coaches, every one of them. Whether you're an individual tennis player, a baseball player, a football player, doesn't matter. They have coaches. In business, we tend to be very reluctant about that. Although, like I said, it's starting to change, I think. So if someone's listening, first of all, do you have any thoughts about that? What's making that landscape change? What's making having a coach as a founder of a business, what's making that more acceptable or more desirable? I guess that's my first question on that topic. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. If I could kind of rewind the clock, I would have got a coach a long time ago. And the number one reason that I didn't back then, and I believe is still prevalent, is that everybody has, particularly as a leader, some level of stiff upper lip that says, no, I cannot succumb to any sign of weakness, that I show any chink in my armor that says, I need help. And that is a sorry state of affairs, because as you said, look at all these athletes, look at all these pro whatever, and they've got someone to help them along. But somewhere along the line, the programming came through, at least on the business side, that we have to be self-made, erroneously. Number two, there is an opening, but the opening is happening at a level that is more likely to be in the Gen Z, in the new world, where everybody is open about starting their own shop, business, and whatever, and they ask for help from everyone. If they have an online community, they have a network, they have a club, and it's so much better. It's that whole millennials to whatever, that we've got this hierarchy, and it may be academically imbued because they had to go get the undergrads, grads, whatever degrees. I haven't sourced it, but it is becoming, thankfully, more open. But much of it is to do with pride. And let me give you a quick instance. I was actually recommended by a venture capital firm to help this particular portfolio CEO. And he wanted it. He wanted it. And we met multiple times. Ultimately, he declined. He went on. 3 years later, he sold, came back to me and said, "Hey, can I take you to lunch?" I said, "Sure." He says, "Thank you. Thank you. I really needed you. I didn't take you because I thought you would be an inside spy on behalf of the board. And I didn't, and I couldn't stomach that thought. It was an incorrect way of thinking, and if I had had help, I could have sold for so much more than I eventually settled at. So it's real. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
So I'd
Excellent.
like to dispel it. I'd like that to have people say, "Hey, go get someone better to help you guide through and navigate this course." So
Excellent. Excellent. So if someone's listening to this and they say, "Hey, I'd like to reach out to Benoy," how do they do that?
it's quite easy. I now have lots of industries that I serve, not just tech, but just go to techceocoach.com, techceocoach.com, because I have a free book there that I'd like everyone to have access to. And the book is called Leadership is Mental. And I'd love for more people to have access to that. I have a formula for effectiveness in there that I've kind of landed on, and I want to help. As long as I'm learning, serving, and creating, I'm in a happy space.
Yeah.
Bela.
So you had mentioned that you've started numerous businesses in your journey here. Again, this podcast listened to by founders, entrepreneurs, people who want to be entrepreneurs. Do you have like 2 or 3 golden nuggets of sort of advice that you would give to individuals who are either thinking about starting a business or are in the throes of starting one and growing one?
Oh, thank you for asking that. It's such an essential question. Number one is before you even say, "I've got the perfect widget, I've got the perfect product," if you don't know how to sell it, don't start the business. Learn how to sell. Learn how to sell your service, your product, your widget, whatever it is. Otherwise, you will be in deep trouble. Revenue covers all ills and all issues. So know how to sell, know how to create a selling machine, ultimately. Number 2, if you're contemplating, or if you even have already started the business of your own, number 2 is always focus on self-improvement first before you demand it of others. The more I think about it, the more irritation, the more frustration, the more negative emotions that I've had through all of these businesses mostly came about because I was not aware that I was feeling inadequate and that I had to do this to prove it. So work on improving yourself, whether it be fitness, whether it be losing weight, whether it be calming your mind, but get healthy first. Put the oxygen mask on. You can't help others if you're, oxygen deprived. Most of the time we're not even aware, and that's why I call it, most of us show up unconsciously incompetent. We're not even aware of the things that we're exhibiting because we haven't taken the time to know of ourselves.
Yeah.
Now, surely in the furnace of growing a new business and all the intensity that goes with it, many cracks will be revealed in your makeup as the human being and the leader, the business owner. But go for it, go attack that first, so that you can be that much better and have more clarity of thought in moving the engine forward, including taking care of the family, which is number 3. You got to have that perspective of rotating through the burners to make sure that you give enough allocation for all the success that you can have at work. No amount of it can compensate for failure at home. No amount. Right? As a famous man that I remember hearing said, no amount of success can compensate for failure at home. And you've got to have that tripod or 4 legs of a stool be balanced out. So know how to sell, know yourself and work on yourself. And number 3, take care of that family. They're the most important product that you can create. They are the most important output in life that you will have.
Very good. Excellent, excellent 3 points. Here's my last question. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have?
I guess the question is, how do you find joy in this journey? And I'm going to ask you that. How have you found joy in this journey at this stage in age, Bela?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I find joy at this stage and all my stages. It wasn't always balanced the same way as you have said, but in my lovely wife, my children, my family. That's still the core of my joy. And sometimes that core dominates 80% of my life. There were periods of time when that core was a small part of my life because I, like you, would go away for 3 weeks and I'd be gone. So I think that's where I find joy primarily from. And related to that is sort of watching my children and now my grandchildren grow and mature and become good human beings. And in the back of my brain, I want to take just a little smidgen of credit for that. and that's what gives me joy. And you know, the other stuff is important, but to me, it gives me the time to spend focusing on what I just talked about. So that's sort of how I think about it, right?
Good. Thank you. That was lovely. Yeah, I find that the definition of joy for me versus happiness or achievement, whatever, joy is a level of almost inner calm and a soul level of happiness that is far superior to fleeting, I won this cup, I
Right.
got to sell my business for X millions of dollars. That's not what I would find or define as something that was joyful. And that's why I deliberately use that word. And I'd like to leave you with a version of my interpretation, my response to that question. For me, the older I get, my formula for joy is when I can be more present so that I can lift the person I'm with, be it my grandchildren, my children, my employee, my clients, my friends. I couldn't be happier. And it's a difficult definition to achieve when you're in the throes of starting a business, because being present is the last thing you're capable of, you think, right? Because you got
Exactly.
10 million things you're juggling in your mind, and you always got the work face on, even at home, and the children can detect when you're not there, even though you're there on the couch. But that, I think, is a goal worthy for everyone to consider, to be so present that you can enjoy that moment with that individual and hopefully participate for that fraction of time with them in whatever they're talking about, sharing about, laughing about. I think, we're talking to business owners here. In all of our discussion, much of it has been outside of the balance sheet, the ratios required, the shares outstanding, the EPS. We don't talk about that. In the end, it's not important. So that's a topic. That's a whole episode. Just we could talk about that. But that's a question I would ask.
Very good. Excellent way to sort of wrap this up and summarize our conversation. Benoy, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I've really enjoyed our conversation immensely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bela, that was really interesting. What were your big takeaways?
So I thought there was just a lot of great leadership lessons in my conversation, starting with knowing yourself. I think that's just key, right? You got to sort of figure out your own self-identity. Number one. Number two, I like the notion of breaking down barriers with others. This notion that communication is important, but you have to make sure that there's no interference or noise on that communication channel, breaking down those barriers. And I thought that, we talked a little about hiring and knowing teams and figuring out ways of getting the best out of the teams that you work with. And that's really helping people achieve their potential, helping them to be successful, not managing them, not overseeing them, but being perceptive enough on your part that you know what they're good at, helping them explore that and helping them grow. So those were the key takeaways for me. What did you think, Mike?
Bela, along similar lines, this really spurred thinking in me on the concept of perspective. And one of the things that I learned at a pretty young age in high school from a counselor, right, was when I wasn't in control of my emotions and I was being a jerk, was this idea of perspective. And how it was explained to me was kind of looking at your life from 30,000 feet above, or 10,000 meters if you're outside of the United States, and kind of regularly assessing this idea that you were talking about with Benoy, your balance and your overall position and maybe your progress on your journey in life, right? It's saying, okay, what's going on? Step away, step out, and take a look. And these check-ins can be great reminders. Maybe you need to shift your priorities, even very slightly, about how you act toward yourself, kind of the self-care, or how you act toward others. You gave lots of examples there. And I think Benoy's thoughts and approach are even more advanced than this kind of basic tool that I've used on really knowing yourself. And this goes beyond branding and self-improvement and these things that, leadership coaches do for you. I think it's this idea of just really, like you said, knowing yourself and really more consciously and selflessly interacting with others in order to make them better. I thought this was really powerful and really interesting. And he framed all these conversations in a really fascinating way. And that leads me to my question back to you. And you asked him this at the end, and he kind of gave you a nice answer. But how do you think, you've worn many entrepreneurship hats, from, leading many startups yourself, to being a venture capitalist, to running entrepreneurship centers, to being a professor, and, going beyond branding and self-improvement and sales and all these things. How do you think Benoy's points are particularly well suited for our listeners, for entrepreneurs?
So I think his points are well suited for entrepreneurs. I think they're actually well suited for everyone. So here was my net of my conversation with him. You need to have your own act together. You need to have your relationships together and in order. You need to feel good about your life and where it's going before you can jump sort of head first into some new project or new business or starting a new business or a new relationship or anything. You gotta have your own act together. I think that's the best way I can say it right now. A new business or a significant project is gonna add stress on your life. And it's going to add stress to those people that interact with your life because you're going to radiate that stress. As I once heard somebody say is, whatever is going on inside of us, we vibrate out and we transmit that out to the world. So this is why, sort of having your own act together is really important. So I just think that to me was the key takeaway. And not only is it's super important for entrepreneurs. I mean, everyone has said, if you're an entrepreneur, man, you are jumping headfirst into the pool, and the pool's not full of water. So you really have to. It's going to take a lot of your time, a lot of your energy, a lot of that stuff, which is great. It's a great journey, but you have to make sure it doesn't destroy the rest of your life. So you got to look inside yourself. Think about that. Make sure you're comfortable with it. Make sure you're in everything's in order before you can focus on the outside. And I think that's a great way of sort of preventing burnout, which you see with a lot of people, not just entrepreneurs, but a lot of people who have very demanding jobs, and they whether it's a job, a traditional job, or whether they're playing sports. I remember my older son, Jason, was a really good baseball player. And we lived in California for a number of years. And in California, even in Little League, baseball was a 12-month-a-year endeavor. They played baseball all the time. And we moved back east, and Jason was a really good pitcher out in California. I can remember numerous times. Well, I won't go into that story, but he's a really good pitcher. And the coach here was recruiting him. And Jason said, nah, I'm burnt out on baseball. I want to play lacrosse. He never played lacrosse in his life, right? But he sort of got burned out on it. So I think this is a good way of sort of protecting yourself and making sure you don't burn out. So that's sort of my summary, Mike. You have any thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I mean, this idea of taking care of yourself first before you can take others, right? Put your own life oxygen mask on before you help others around you. This is super important. And I think the older people out there will get this a little more, and the younger people, there's a lot of pressure. And one of the things, I mean, you and I can complain a lot about being old and our body and our hair and whatever else, right? But the idea of that wisdom of being able to see what's really important is really priceless. And it's the one thing that I really enjoy about getting old, right? Is this idea of being able to see where value really is and where value is really created. And I learn still every day, and I think people need to do this, and people need to go down that path of kind of figuring out what's most important. And maybe they don't need as big of a house or as fancy of a car. And maybe it's kind of spending more time with people that you care about. Maybe it's, not taking that one more business trip and going to see an old friend or a family member that you haven't seen in a while. So these decisions are what makes you, I think, a richer person. And I don't mean rich in the financial sense. And I think, if you have these priorities in order, that's going to make you a better manager and a better leader, both. Leader meaning you help motivate people and help people change. Manager just meaning getting the most out of people on a day-to-day basis in terms of organizing their time and respecting their values and their skills and kind of on the day-to-day standpoint. So I couldn't agree with you more. I'm probably just repeating the same things that we've said, but I think the points are so important that maybe it's worth thinking about those in some different ways. I just like the thought, and I like the positivity, and hopefully that's something that listeners can take with them today. And in the coming weeks to kind of reprioritize and kind of get in touch with yourself and your own feelings and use the positive energy to influence others in a better way rather than bringing people down.
Yeah, agreed.
Nice thoughts. Yeah. What do you think? Should we wrap this one up?
Agreed, Mike. Yeah, let's call it a day.
All right, listeners, thanks for spending some time with us and listening to this interview. We hope that you found it interesting and thought-provoking like we did. If you have questions about what we've discussed, or you have any questions at all, please get in touch with us. Our email is bela.and.mike@gmail.com.
And finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, please hit that like button on your podcasting app. We'd like to increase the subscriptions to this podcast. The more subscribers we have, the easier it is to find on various different podcasting apps and on YouTube. So if you'd subscribe also, that would be wonderful. And if you know of someone that'd be a good guest on the show, let us know. So that's it for today's episode. So signing off from next time, up here in upstate Rhode Island, not New York, on the Narragansett Bay. See y'all soon.
And from over here in Münster, Germany, I'm still at my desk and I'm still in Germany, but always great to see everybody. And I look forward to seeing everybody soon. And Bela, have a great sailing trip.